Every Sigma male has a breaking point, not from weakness but from clarity. It's the moment he realizes that being the underdog isn't fate, it's a phase. For years he's walked through life underestimated. The quiet one in the corner, the thinker no one took seriously, the man people doubted until they needed him. He's been dismissed, ignored, and overlooked. But every time the world counted him out, he was counting lessons. Then one day, without warning, everything changes. He stops proving. He stops explaining. He stops chasing validation from people who could never see his value. That's the moment the underdog dies and the Sigma arrives. Because the truth is, the Sigma male never wanted to compete. He wanted to create. While others were busy showing off, he was building quietly. Skills, discipline, understanding. Every failure became foundation. Every rejection became redirection. So when he finally steps forward, it feels sudden to everyone else. But to him, it's just time. The man who once walked alone now moves with precision, purpose, and peace. People start to notice the shift. The silence they mistook for shyness now feels like power. The distance they called arrogance now reads as discipline. And the Sigma doesn't say, "I told you so," he just becomes the proof. If you've ever been doubted, underestimated, or ignored, this one's for you. Subscribe to UltraWise for more deep storytelling about Sigma mindset, silent strength, and the psychology of quiet dominance. And tell me in the comments, do you think staying underestimated is an advantage or just the beginning of something greater? The shift from seeking validation to self-recognition. There's a quiet moment in every Sigma male's life when something inside him snaps, not in anger, but in awakening. It's the realization that he's been chasing approval from people who were never qualified to give it. For years, he tried to prove his worth through hard work, loyalty, and consistency, hoping someone would finally say, "You matter." But that praise never came. Or, if it did, it came too late. And in that silence, the Sigma learned one of the hardest lessons life could teach. Validation from others is a prison built out of insecurity. So, he tears it down. At first, it's painful. The withdrawal from external approval feels like detox. He notices how much of his identity was wrapped around being accepted by family, friends, colleagues, lovers. He starts to see how deeply he'd been conditioned to earn his place instead of owning it. But then comes the shift, subtle, internal, irreversible. He stops asking, "Do they see me?" and starts asking, "Do I see myself?" That question changes everything. He begins to move differently. Instead of performing, he starts creating. Instead of chasing, he starts choosing. The energy that was once scattered, trying to impress everyone, now folds inward, becoming fuel for his evolution. Every decision begins to come from alignment rather than approval. He no longer measures success by applause, but by peace. He no longer feels the need to explain his dreams, because he finally understands that real power doesn't need to be explained, it just needs to be embodied. And then something powerful happens. People start noticing. The same ones who once overlooked him now study his calm, his focus, his detachment. But by then it no longer matters. The Sigma has already outgrown the need for recognition. His validation now comes from execution, from integrity, from the quiet satisfaction of becoming who he said he'd be, even when no one was watching. This is the shift that changes everything, when he stops waiting for the world to name his worth and decides to define it himself. Because once a Sigma male learns that recognition is internal, not earned, but owned, he stops being the underdog and starts becoming the standard. turning point of isolation. There's a point in every Sigma male story where solitude stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like power. At first, the loneliness is heavy. The silence echoes. The world that once felt familiar now feels distant, and the people he used to lean on slowly fade away. It's not that he pushed them out. It's that they stopped fitting the man he's becoming. Isolation used to sting because it felt like rejection. But with time, it transforms into revelation. The Sigma begins to realize that being alone isn't emptiness, it's clarity. In that quiet, he starts to hear things that the noise of the world had been drowning out. His intuition, his ambition, his truth. Every unanswered text, every friendship that faded, every room he left, all of it becomes space for growth. He starts to see that solitude doesn't strip him of power, it centers it. While others depend on validation to feel relevant, the Sigma uses isolation to refine his purpose. He's no longer seeking connection for comfort, he's seeking alignment. It's in this turning point that his mindset shifts permanently. The same silence that once hurt him now heals him. The time that used to feel empty now becomes productive. He learns that being alone doesn't mean being unseen, it means being unreachable by distraction. Every walk in silence, every late night alone, every plan executed without applause adds another layer to his composure. He's not escaping people, he's escaping delusion. Through isolation, he meets the purest version of himself, the version that doesn't need noise, validation, or approval. He begins to value quality over company, solitude over attention, stillness over chaos. His thoughts become sharper, his goals clearer, his energy cleaner. And when he finally steps back into the world, people sense the difference immediately. The same man they once pitied for being alone now radiates peace and focus they can't replicate. They can't understand it. How solitude, which breaks so many, somehow built him stronger. But that's the turning point they never saw coming, when the Sigma stopped fearing loneliness and realized it was never his enemy. It was his training ground. Silence transformed into strategy. There comes a moment when the Sigma male's silence stops being misunderstood, when it no longer comes from confusion or hurt, but from control. For years, people mistook his quiet for weakness. They thought his lack of reaction meant indifference or fear, but what they never realized was that his silence wasn't absence, it was absorption. Every insult, every dismissal, every underestimation, he was collecting data. While others were busy talking, he was listening. While they showed their moves, he was studying their patterns. And when the time came, he knew exactly how to play the game they didn't even realize they were in. Silence becomes his weapon, not to manipulate, but to master. He learns that reaction is a form of control, and those who can't control their emotions become controlled by others. The Sigma refuses to give anyone that power. He doesn't argue with disrespect. He doesn't chase understanding. He doesn't explain his plans to people who only want to question them. He's learned that mystery protects momentum, that sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is the one who says the least. In this transformation, the Sigma's energy changes completely. His silence no longer feels passive, it feels precise. When he's quiet, it's not because he doesn't have something to say. It's because he's already decided what's worth saying and what isn't. Every word he withholds builds power. Every secret he keeps builds leverage. People start to feel uneasy around him, not because he's intimidating, but because they can't read him anymore. His silence turns into rhythm, measured, intentional, strategic. He speaks only when it adds value, acts only when it guarantees impact. The same quiet that once isolated him now amplifies his presence. The Sigma understands that in a world that's obsessed with noise, silence is dominance. And that's the shift few ever notice until it's too late, when they realize the man they once dismissed as quiet has been 5 steps ahead all along. Because when a Sigma male learns how to turn silence into strategy, he stops being predictable and starts becoming untouchable. Discipline replaces doubt. At some point in the Sigma male's evolution, the noise fades and only routine remains. This is where everything shifts. He stops chasing motivation and starts living by discipline. The emotions that once ruled him, doubt, fear, hesitation, lose their power because he no longer needs to feel ready to move. He just moves. While others are still debating whether they can, the Sigma is already doing it, quietly, consistently, relentlessly. In the beginning, doubt was constant. It whispered to him in every failure, every setback, every comparison. It told him he wasn't enough, that maybe everyone else was right to overlook him. But instead of arguing with it, he outworked it. He started showing up even when it hurt, even when no one clapped, even when progress was invisible. And that's where the transformation began, when effort became his therapy. Every rep, every hour, every late night wasn't about success anymore. It was about self-respect. Through discipline, he learned something most people never do, that consistency is louder than confidence. He stops waiting for external proof that he's capable and creates his own through repetition. Doubt doesn't disappear, it just stops mattering. The Sigma learns that the cure for uncertainty isn't reassurance, it's action. He doesn't need to believe in himself to move forward. He moves forward until he can't help but believe. Discipline becomes his anchor. It gives structure to chaos, purpose to pain, meaning to solitude. It's what separates him from the world that seeks shortcuts and validation. He no longer wastes time trying to feel powerful. His habits make him powerful. His mind becomes his engine, his routine the armor that carries him through days when nothing else does. And that's the moment he outgrows the underdog phase, when his actions start speaking louder than his self-doubt. The man who once questioned everything now needs no answers, because he's realized that discipline is the only faith that never fails. It never asks you to believe, it just asks you to begin. And once the Sigma masters that, doubt has no room left to live. Power through emotional control. The Sigma male's true evolution begins when he learns to master what once ruled him, his emotions. It's not that he stops feeling, it's that he stops leaking. In his younger years, his anger was explosive, his sadness consuming, his empathy draining. He'd react impulsively to disrespect, to betrayal, to injustice, because he cared deeply and expected the same depth in return. But experience, especially pain, taught him something essential. Emotion is energy, and energy without direction is chaos. So he stopped reacting and started channeling. Now, when something angers him, he doesn't argue, he builds. When someone disrespects him, he doesn't explode, he elevates. Every emotion becomes fuel, every feeling a signal. Instead of being trapped by his sensitivity, he refines it into awareness. He feels everything, but he responds to almost nothing. Because the Sigma has learned that the loudest man in the room is rarely the strongest, it's the one who can stay calm while everyone else loses control. Emotional control becomes his quiet power. It protects his energy, sharpens his focus, and separates him from the impulsive masses. He no longer lets people drag him into emotional battles that lead nowhere. He no longer gives explanations to those committed to misunderstanding him. His silence in the face of provocation is not submission, it's strategy. Every reaction he withholds becomes a weapon they can't predict. But this control doesn't come from coldness, it comes from wisdom. He's seen what happens when emotion runs wild. Relationships destroyed, focus shattered, peace stolen. So he chooses balance. He uses emotion as data, not direction. Anger tells him where his boundaries are. Sadness tells him what needs to heal. Fear tells him what's worth facing. And once he understands it, he transforms it. That's why his power feels so different. It's not reactive. It's regulated. People can sense it in his presence. The composure, the precision, the quiet dominance. That can't be shaken. He doesn't control others. He controls himself. And that's what makes him unstoppable. Because when a man masters his emotions, the world can no longer play with his peace. It has to respect it. The reversal of perception. There comes a time when the world finally realizes what the Sigma male has known all along, that silence was never weakness, that solitude was never loneliness, and that calm was never submission. This is the moment when perception flips, when everything they misunderstood about him becomes the very reason they now respect him. For years they called him distant, cold, or arrogant because they couldn't read him. They laughed at his detachment, mistook his independence for isolation, his minimalism for lack. But now, as he rises quietly with precision and purpose, those same people look back and see it differently. What they once mocked, they now admire. The reversal doesn't happen because the Sigma changed. It happens because results changed the narrative. The man who used to walk alone now moves with presence that commands attention. His focus has built what their noise never could. The same silence they once overlooked now feels magnetic. People start to realize that while they were chasing attention, he was chasing mastery. And he caught it. It's not revenge he feels, it's recognition. Not from them, but from himself. The world's opinion was always a reflection of its own insecurities, not his worth. Now that his work, discipline, and peace have solidified into results, the truth becomes undeniable. He was never behind. He was simply building underground. The Sigma doesn't rub it in. He doesn't post his success for approval or throw shade at those who doubted him. His victory is subtle, psychological. The quiet satisfaction of knowing he stayed true while everyone else broke for applause. What once made him an outsider now makes him a mystery. What once made him underestimated now makes him unreachable. The irony is poetic. The man they once ignored now defines the standard they aspire to. The world hasn't changed. He has. His aura speaks for him now, calm yet commanding, simple yet unstoppable. The reversal of perception is complete, and it's not fueled by anger, but by evolution. Because when a Sigma male stops trying to be understood and starts being undeniable, the same people who doubted him will rewrite history just to say they always believed in him. The emergence of unapologetic confidence. There's a difference between confidence that's performed and confidence that's earned. When the Sigma male reaches this stage, he no longer needs to convince anyone of who he is. The noise of self-doubt, the echo of criticism, the weight of comparison, all of it fades into irrelevance. What remains is certainty. Not arrogance, not ego, but an unshakable knowing of what he stands for, what he's capable of, and what he will never tolerate again. This is unapologetic confidence, the kind that doesn't shout, but radiates. It wasn't always this way. For years, he second-guessed himself, softened his edges, and dimmed his presence to make others comfortable. He thought humility meant shrinking. But pain and solitude taught him that playing small doesn't serve anyone. It only starves potential. So now he walks differently, grounded, calm, deliberate. His confidence isn't built on validation or appearance. It's built on repetition, on discipline, on doing what others talk about. He's earned every ounce of it through scars and solitude. Unapologetic confidence doesn't mean he thinks he's better than anyone. It means he no longer needs to compete. He's not trying to win approval or attention. He's simply existing in his lane with complete alignment. When he speaks, it's concise. When he acts, it's decisive. When he enters a room, people feel it. That unspoken authority that comes from a man who knows exactly who he is. And the beauty of it is that it doesn't need to be explained. He doesn't post about it, doesn't perform it, doesn't seek eyes to validate it. His confidence exists whether anyone notices or not, because it's no longer dependent on being seen. He's done apologizing for his strength, his silence, his standards. He's not rude. He's real. That's the essence of the Sigma's rise. He's no longer asking for space. He's taking it. Not through aggression, but through alignment. Not through force, but through presence. The man who once questioned his worth now moves with quiet conviction. And that's the most powerful kind of confidence there is, the kind that doesn't need words, because it's already written in his energy. The rise into self-defined greatness. The final transformation of the Sigma male is not about domination, it's about definition. He no longer measures success by society's rules or by what others think greatness should look like. For him, greatness is not a crown, it's clarity. It's waking up every day with peace, purpose, and power that no one can give or take away. The man who was once underestimated has now built an empire within, one made of discipline, solitude, integrity, and relentless self-respect. His rise isn't about proving anyone wrong anymore. It's about proving himself right. This kind of greatness doesn't demand attention, it attracts it. It's not loud or dramatic, it's built in quiet mornings, in consistent work, in the invisible hours no one sees. The Sigma doesn't chase status, luxury, or recognition. He's past that. What he's after now is mastery. Mastery of his mind, his craft, his emotions, and his destiny. The game has changed because he no longer plays it for the crowd. He plays it for him. There's a sacred calm in his confidence now. The need to impress is gone. The desire to evolve is constant. He's learned that true greatness isn't measured by how high you climb, but by how deep you grow. The deeper he went into solitude, the stronger his foundation became. The world only sees the result, the calm, composed man who seems untouchable, but what they don't see are the nights he broke down, the mornings he rebuilt, the pain he turned into precision. His greatness is not borrowed, it's self-made. And that's why it lasts, because everything he is now, he earned without applause. The man who once walked as an underdog now walks as his own definition of success. Not competing, not proving, just being. His silence is power, his peace is luxury, his consistency is legacy. The Sigma's rise isn't the end of his story. It's the beginning of his reign, one not over others, but over himself. And that's the purest kind of greatness there is, the kind that doesn't depend on being seen because it's already been found within. In the end, the Sigma male's rise isn't about revenge, attention, or validation. It's about arrival. The world sees the calm, the control, the confidence, but they'll never understand the storms it took to build them. He no longer fights for a place in anyone's story. He writes his own. The underdog label that once defined him now feels like a memory, something he outgrew the moment he stopped asking for acknowledgement and started embodying greatness. He doesn't need to prove his strength anymore. His discipline speaks for him. He doesn't need to chase recognition. His energy demands it. The world that once doubted him now studies him in silence, because his growth didn't come from applause. It came from alignment. The Sigma male doesn't rise to be seen. He rises to be sovereign. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to UltraWise, where we decode the psychology of silent power, emotional evolution, and masculine mastery. And tell me in the comments, do you think real power comes from proving others wrong or proving yourself right in silence.